He had the wrong pocket. That's all it took to nearly get me killed on Glenick Bridge. His handkerchief was on the right. Stepan always kept it on the left. Soviet protocol. Ritual, almost. So who the hell was this man walking toward me, claiming to be him? I should have stayed silent. I should have walked. Instead, I called for verification. That's when the red dots lit up on the mist. Dozens. Some from our side, some from theirs. And one on my throat. Nobody blinked. Nobody breathed. The swap was seconds from collapsing. And me? I was thinking about a cell in 61. About the things that man heard. Me say in the dark, this story's not in the files. But it almost ended in blood. Mine, most likely. Before I say more, hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching. From city and hour. I want to know who still listens to Ghosts. It started with a sound I can still hear leather saws over wet concrete. A slow, deliberate crunch that echoed louder than the engines cooling behind me. A kind of sound that doesn't belong in a silent operation. We weren't supposed to draw attention, but every step on that soaked bridge felt like a trigger cocking. I kept my eyes forward. That was the protocol. Focus on the midpoint, never at the faces. Never let emotion show. But it wasn't emotion crawling up my spine. It was the weight of something off. You don't spend a decade in the field without learning when a place is lying to you. And that night, Glenick Bridge lied with every damn droplet sliding off. The iron rails, I took another step. The man coming from the other side did too. We moved like mirrored shadows. Except his posture, it didn't match the files. Too loose. Too rehearsed. Like someone mimicking a gait they'd only read about. Behind me, someone whispered into my earpiece, all quiet. But it wasn't. Not in my chest. Not in the way the fog seemed to move against the wind. Something wasn't quiet, it was holding. Its breath. The crunch grew louder. Not because of volume, because of recognition. That rhythm, I'd heard it before. Same cadence, same delay on the right foot. But not from Stepan DK, from someone else. I gripped the folder in my coat. Pocket. Inside were the last known images of Stepan. I wasn't supposed to look. That was for handlers. But I'd already memorized them. His eyes always tilted slightly downward, even when standing proud. This man kept looking straight ahead, chin raised like he owned the world. We were 3 steps apart now. The protocol said we wait for the signal. I didn't wait. I looked down. There it was. His shoes, shiny, unscuffed, impeccable. Stepan had been in solitary for 7 months. No man walks out of that wearing polished shoes. The crunch under my own shoes turned to thunder in my ears. I thought about turning, about pretending I hadn't seen it, about letting the exchange finish. But then he looked up at me, not around, not past me, at me, and smiled. I felt something inside my ribs tighten, because it wasn't just any smile. It was mine. A smile I used to make when I knew more than they did. That's when I knew I wasn't just looking at a decoy. I was looking at someone who knew me. And the bridge suddenly felt way too narrow. I didn't care if he lived. I cared if he remembered. That was the difference. Everyone thought I was just nervous about protocol. But I wasn't sweating because of the KGB. I was sweating because the man walking toward me, who claimed to be Stepan, had once heard me break. 3 weeks in a Moldovan hole with no windows, no clocks, and 1 cellmate. Him. We didn't speak much the first few days. That's how you survive. But cold, hunger, and time strip men down. And I talked. Not operational secrets, no. But things that mattered just the same. Regrets. Names. That one night in Prague, I shouldn't have survived. He listened. Eyes down. Always polite, always quiet. I assumed he was just another body waiting to be traded. But on the 12th day, He asked me something he shouldn't have known. Something about my sister's wedding. Something buried in a report I'd signed years earlier. That's when I stopped talking, and that's why I filed for reassignment the minute we got out. Now here he was again, or someone pretending to be him, walking toward me on Gleenick Bridge, with the same damn silence in his face. My breath caught when I saw his file pass to the Soviet envoy. We were about to hand him back, alive, intact. What if he spoke this time? What if this whole exchange wasn't a swap, but a reset? A way to recycle ghosts. The others didn't know what he carried. They saw a name, a face, a value. I saw a fuse. When I was 5 steps away, he slowed. Just slightly. A half-second pause, like he expected me to say something first. My throat dried. His face was clean. Too clean. Real prisoners carry the scent of metal and disinfectant. This man smelled like aftershave. I turned to Davis, our handler on site, and whispered, "We can't give him back." He shook his head. "Not our call." "It is now," I said. Davis clenched his jaw. I knew that look. He was weighing whether to override me or report me. But he didn't do either. He just said, "Then find something." I looked back. Man was standing still now, waiting, hands behind his back, just like in the files. And that's when I noticed it. Left hand slightly curled, right one too straight, like he was hiding a tremor or a weapon. I stepped forward again. But this time, it wasn't to deliver. It was to stall, because fear isn't always about death. Sometimes it's about memory. And what might resurface if you give the wrong man back to the wrong side? It was a detail so small, it should have meant nothing. But that's how people die in our world, by ignoring the little things. Red silk, folded twice. Edges frayed just enough to look lived in. The Soviets used it as a coded marker, a way to signal identity across language, across silence. Stepan DK always wore his in the left breast pocket. Always. Left meant approved for trade. Right meant stand down or not authorized. Simple, brutal, efficient. I noticed it just as the wind caught the edge of his coat. A flash of red where it didn't belong. Right side, I didn't react. Not on the outside. But inside, my gut twisted. Because if that was an error, it was lethal. And if it wasn't, then someone wanted me to notice. I took another step forward, hands loose, posture steady. The cameras were rolling. The Swiss and Swedish observers had their eyes on us. Even the East German soldier pretending not to record, he was watching. And there I was, staring at a goddamn handkerchief. Davis was still behind me. "Proceed," he said into the comms. But I couldn't. Not yet. I turned slightly, just enough to align my shoulder with the imposter. His hands were still behind his back, calm, unflinching. That pocket wasn't just a mistake. It was a signal. To me. He was letting me know he wasn't Stepan. But he also wasn't afraid. I reached for the file in my coat again. Not to check his name. I wanted to feel the weight of it. To remember what was real. Page 3. Scar present. Left wrist. Tattoo partially erased. Page 7. Confirmed behaviors under stress. Biting lower lip. Tapping left foot. This man did neither. He stood like stone. Too confident for a man just released. Too still for someone about to go home. I had 2 options. Ignore it. Walk through. Let the bridge do its job. Or call it out. But calling it out would mean breaking protocol. And breaking protocol meant guns. I looked at the pocket again. At the edge of red. And in that moment, it felt like a countdown. What kind of spy makes that mistake? What kind of prisoner walks out that clean? And why show me that handkerchief unless he wanted me to stop him? My fingers curled. My breath slowed. Because in our world, misplaced fabric is never just fabric. It's a test or a trap, and I was already standing in it. The line wasn't on any map. It was a strip of faded paint across the midpoint of the bridge, one side white, the other gray. Invisible to tourists, obvious to us. The unofficial border of the official exchange. You weren't supposed to stop there. You weren't supposed to speak. You damn sure weren't supposed to turn around. But I did all three. 2 steps before the mark, I paused. The red handkerchief still burned in my mind, the wrong pocket flashing like a wound. I heard Davis hiss through comes, "Keep walking." The man on the other side, the not steppin', froze. No shift in stance, no surprise. Like he expected me to hesitate. I tilted my head, just a hair. Enough to catch his face in profile. Still clean, still unreadable. And then I did it. I turned fully, faced him, and shouted, "Verification protocol." Immediate hold, silence. Then movement. The Soviet envoy barked something in Russian. Our translator flinched. On both sides of the bridge, boots shuffled. Safeties clicked off. I heard the metallic inhale of rifles being raised, not in unison, but in suspicion. I just violated the agreement. Behind me, Davis moved fast. "What the hell are you doing?" But I didn't answer. I couldn't, because the imposter was still standing still, still calm, but now his eyes, they changed, slightly, a flicker of something. Not fear, not even anger. Resignation. He single quotes expected this. The Soviet colonel stepped forward, furious, waving a black folder. "You break deal," he snapped. "You stop exchange." I didn't move. I stared at the man across from me and repeated, louder this time, "Immediate verification. Confirm identity now." Davis cursed into his mic. The observers looked ready to step in. The air grew thick with decisions. And then I heard it, barely audible. A click from somewhere high, a rooftop, or a perch above the fog. And suddenly, I knew. Someone had their scope on me. Not theoretical, not defensive, active. That line on the bridge? I just erased it with my voice. And now there was no safe side. No west, no east, just us, caught in the middle with rifles pointed in every direction. I wanted to move, to breathe, to retreat, but that line, I'd crossed it. And in our work, crossing a line isn't just symbolic. It's irreversible. You don't see the lasers at first. You feel them, not like in the movies, no visible beams cutting through fog. Just a sudden shift in atmosphere, like the bridge itself started holding its breath. Then the dots appeared, one by one, on the coat of the Soviet envoy, on the shoulder of Davis, one on the imposter's throat, and one right below my ear. I didn't flinch, couldn't, because movement means escalation. And escalation, at that range, means blood on the bricks. I could hear Davis whisper, "You've got one on you. Don't twitch." Thanks, Davis. Helpful as always. The imposter didn't move either. He just watched me, calm, waiting, not blinking. Like he knew the dots weren't meant for him. My legs started to shake, not from fear, but from pressure. My own body trying not to betray me. And a voice crackled over the East German speaker system, garbled, Russian accented English. "Lower weapon. Resume protocol." But I hadn't drawn mine. That meant someone had. Someone behind me. I wanted to speak, to say I needed verification, to insist, but I didn't trust my voice, because it wasn't just the Soviets aiming. The red dot on my neck was steady. No shake, no flicker. That was Western glass, American precision. We were all lined up. Every man on that bridge, one breath away from becoming a body. And for what? A swap that wasn't real. A man who wasn't. Who he claimed. A silence too carefully constructed. The imposter's gaze didn't waver. He tilted his head slightly, almost like approval. He wanted this, not the exchange. The crossfire. That's when I felt it panic, but not mine. From Davis, he whispered again, "Call it off, now." But I couldn't, because calling it off meant admitting we'd been played. And if I was right, someone wanted this exact scenario. Lasers up, nerves cracked, fingers twitching. I scanned the faces: Soviet officers, our own men, the neutral observers, everyone frozen. Except one man behind the Soviet envoy. Adjusting something in his coat, I leaned slightly, enough to spot a wire. A transmitter, too sleek for their tech. West German? CIA? Or worse, ours, but not logged. Someone was broadcasting this. To whom? I didn't know. I stepped back, just half a foot. The red dot moved with me. So I smiled. Wide, fake, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Lovely evening for a misunderstanding, isn't it?" The observers chuckled, nervously. The lasers didn't move. That's when I knew. This wasn't tension. This was choreography. And I was the only one. Off-script. The rain eased just enough for the skin to matter. I don't know what made me ask. Maybe the wire under the envoy's coat. Maybe the red dot still kissing my throat. But mostly, it was the way he smiled. Too controlled, too sure. Like someone who knew what my next move would be and had rehearsed his reaction. I spoke low. Clear. "Show me your left wrist." That broke the silence harder than a gunshot. The Soviet colonel barked something guttural. The observers stirred. Davis hissed behind me. Jesus, not now, but it was too late. The imposter extended his arm. Slowly, calmly, the sleeve pulled. Back. There it was. The tattoo. The faded outline of a bird with open wings. Stepan's insignia from prison. Acid burned, but something was missing. I leaned closer. No cross-shaped scar. Stepan's arm had been stitched after a failed suicide. Attempt in '59. The mark crossed the bird like a slash through hope. But this arm had the ink, not the wound. That meant one of two things. Either it wasn't Stepan, or someone recreated the tattoo on another man. Neither option felt safe. Stepan tried to kill himself in Minsk. I said out loud. The imposter didn't blink, didn't flinch. He simply replied, "That report was sealed." And that's when I froze, because even if he were Stepan, he wasn't supposed to know that detail. That line was blacked out in every version but mine. Only one other copy existed, back at Langley, and suddenly, the tattoo without the scar wasn't the scariest part. It was his knowledge. The kind that doesn't come from memory, but from briefing. I stared at him. And for a second, he looked tired, like the act itself was heavier than the truth. The colonel shouted again, the observers now fully alert. But no one moved. I dropped my gaze. The bird looked alive. Too alive, like it had never been caged, never burned, never broken. I stepped back, chest tight, because that wrist told me something no file ever could. This man had never tried to escape. He was sent to be accepted, to be passed through. And maybe to watch who noticed. I don't know why I fixated on his neck. Maybe it was all I had left when the files failed, when the scars lied, when the voice echoed facts no one should have known. But that pulse, that thin rhythm just under his skin. It wasn't fear. It was timing. He was standing still, but not relaxed. Not resigned, calculated, like a chess player who knew the next 7 moves, and only needed me to make the first wrong one. Davis edged closer. "If you push this, we lose the swap," he whispered. I'm not pushing, I said. I'm listening. To what? His heartbeat. He thought I was losing it. Maybe I was, but the man in front of me, his manufactured Stepan, wasn't sweating. He was waiting for something. I looked for a sign, a tell. Then I saw it, a tiny twitch in his jaw. Not nervousness. Synchronization got. I turned my comms to the crisis channel. Red line check. Do you copy? Silence. I tried again. Nothing. Not even static. I switched frequencies. All dead. No backup. No Langley, like someone had unplugged me from the grid. And in that silence, I understood this wasn't just a bad exchange. It was a performance, a show staged for observers and cameras. And we were the actors who hadn't read the real script. The imposter shifted his weight. Not much, but enough for me to see the line of tension in his neck. That pulse again. Rhythmic. Intentional. I leaned in, voice low. What happens if I shoot you? His eyes didn't flicker. He just said, then we all go home early. My hand went cold, because that wasn't a threat. It was a reset. This man was here to provoke a trigger, not a trade. Davis caught the tension. He said nothing more, just moved his hand to his belt. I whispered, we need to stall. But there was no more time. Because his pulse was steady. And mine was about to stop. There's a channel they don't list on the protocols. Not Langley. Not NATO. A frequency we kept in the lining of coats in the false scenes of briefcases. Emergency only. Burn after use kind of thing. I had mine in a cigarette. Tin taped under the left armpit. Never touched it in 17 years. But that morning, I knew I'd need it. As the imposter's heartbeat kept counting down to something we didn't understand. I turned my back to the Soviet side, lit a real cigarette, and pressed the coil into my rib. Click, hold, whisper. Snowcap Alpha. You read? Nothing. I rotated the dial. Once, twice. Snowcap Alpha. Confirm position. This is hollow echo. Still nothing. Even dead lines make noise. Hiss. Static. Pop. But this was silence with purpose. Like the wires had been pulled on purpose. I looked up at Davis. He was already watching me. You get through? He asked. I shook my head. He didn't ask again, which meant he already knew. I pressed one last. Code an old one. Echo 3640. If Langley was listening, that would unlock a dead channel. But what came back wasn't protocol. A single word, whispered, broken, rehearsal. My mouth went dry, because that wasn't a code. Word. It was a message. This entire thing. The handkerchief. The tattoo. The lasers. It wasn't a swap. It was a drill. Or worse, a diversion. The bridge, the tension, the red dots. All of it staged? For what? I scanned the tree line. Nothing. The banks were clear. The East Germans hadn't moved, but I remembered something Stepan had once told me in the cell. If they ever let you go too easily, it's because someone more valuable just slipped past. And then it hit me. We were all facing east. Eyes locked on each other. Hands on triggers. But what if the real mission had already passed us by? I opened my mouth to speak, and that's when I saw it far behind the fog, down the B1 road to Potsdam. A second car lights off, moving quiet. Too fast for protocol, too slow for panic. And suddenly, the silence in my ear made sense. They hadn't forgotten us. They'd deleted us. Their single quotes as a rhythm to official exchanges. Everything moves slow on purpose. It's theater, after all. Cameras, witnesses, red folders, fake tension. But that car was real. No markings. No convoy. No headlights. Just a glint of metal slicing through the mist beyond the tree line, wheels kissing the wet pavement too smoothly for a diplomatic vehicle. I stepped sideways, just enough to break the angle. Davis followed my line of sight. "You see it?" I asked. He nodded once. Didn't speak. Didn't have to dot it was coming from the American side, but not part of our convoy. That meant one thing: unlogged asset. Ghost transport dot and the timing god. The timing was perfect. While our eyes locked on lasers, fake step-ins, and shouting colonels, someone had opened another door. The car slid past the access road checkpoint. No guards, no signal. And then I saw the plate, covered in mud, but I knew that curve. CD-719. A diplomatic ID, last registered to the Swedish attache's second vehicle. Except that car was supposed to be in Stockholm. I lit another cigarette, not because I needed it, but because the smoke covered my whisper. To who? Davis didn't answer. Instead, he handed me a folded slip. No words, just a diagram, a layout of a facility I hadn't seen in over a decade. Fort Beaver, Storage Wing D. Why now? Why here? And that's when it all collapsed into place. We weren't trading Stepan. We were burying him. The real one, whoever he was, whatever he carried, was in that second car. And this bridge, this fog, this man standing in front of me with the wrong pocket and the right smile. He was the decoy dot, not for the Soviets. For us dot, so we could say it happened. So the paperwork would match. So we could forget the part that didn't. I clenched the cigarette tighter. Ash falling like snow. The fake Stepan blinked slowly, as if acknowledging something. Or someone. And the car disappeared past the curve. No sirens. No chase. Just silence. Because in Berlin, in '62, some ghosts weren't meant to escape. They were meant to be erased. The first time I saw him, I was 23 and arrogant. Camp, Peary, winter of '52. He taught us how to vanish. Not physically. Institutionally. How to erase paper trails, build new ones, speak without speaking. He had a scar that ran from his ear to the base of his jaw. A souvenir from Tehran, they said. No one ever called him by name. Just sir. And there he was, 12 years later, standing on the eastern side of the bridge, wearing a Soviet colonel's uniform. My heart didn't skip. It stalled. I tried not to react. Kept my posture square, eyes locked on the fake Stepan. But I felt the weight shift behind the fog. He hadn't aged. Same rigid stance. Same deliberate breath between steps. But now, he was their escort. Their handler. Which meant everything I thought I knew about this swap, about its origin, its purpose, was wrong. He caught my gaze. And for a second, time folded, because he smiled. Not mockery. Recognition. He lifted his hand, thumb brushing the brim of his cap. A gesture we were taught at Peary, used only when your cover was compromised. But your mission remained. Then he mouthed it. One word: don't. I blinked. Not don't shoot. Not don't move. Just don't. And I knew this wasn't about Stepan. It wasn't about the car. It wasn't even about east or west. It was about something deeper, older, rotten. The instructor wasn't dead. He wasn't retired. He had changed sides, or maybe he'd never had one. And here he was, managing the exchange that never should have happened, making sure the right imposter crossed, and the right witnesses stayed silent. Davis leaned in. You know him? I said nothing. Because what do you say when the man who taught you to disappear has reappeared, wearing the enemy's stars? I took a breath, and for the first time, that night, I thought about my gun, not to shoot, to signal. To end the performance. My hand moved before my mind caught up. Not instinct, not protocol, something older, I slipped the safety off, lifted the barrel, but not toward him. Not toward anyone. Straight up. The fog swirled around my wrist like it knew what was coming. A single breath, a single pull, and then crack. The shot rang out like a slap across the face of God. Not fatal, but final. Every rifle tensed. Every dot blinked out. Silence cracked in half. No one moved. For 3 seconds, the world held its breath. And then, slowly, the colonel, my old instructor, nodded. Just once, almost respectfully. The fake Stepan stood still. No flinch. No confusion. He knew what it meant. The swap was over. Davis barked into his mic, ordering a fallback. Observers raised their hands. The Soviet side muttered, shuffled, signaled retreat. We broke formation, but I didn't move. Not yet. I looked at the imposter. One last time. He met my eyes and mouthed 2 words. Next time. I holstered my weapon, turned my back, walked off that bridge. 10 minutes later, my credentials were suspended. Alteration of protocol, they said. Compromised outcome. I didn't argue, didn't file, didn't return. Never set foot in Berlin again. But that sound, the echo of the shot through fog, steel and lies, it still follows me because it didn't end anything. It only paused it. And deep down, we both knew there would be a next time. Years later, too many to matter, I found myself in a university archive in Maryland, not for research, not for nostalgia. Just looking for silence that didn't echo back. I told them I was writing a memoir. They let me into the restricted boxes. Classified clippings, Cold War case notes, storage from Langley's overflow. That's where I saw it. A plain cardboard box. Faded label, no barcode. Inside, dust, old index cards, and a notebook. No cover. No spine. Just stitched pages and faint ink. Initials on the first page. SDK. My mouth went dry. I opened it. Not carefully. Not like a relic. Like someone ripping off a bandage. First line. I also pretended not to recognize you, so I wouldn't have to kill you. My hands froze. There it was. In his handwriting, not the imposter. The real Stepan. Somehow, he'd known I was watching, known what would happen, and still chose silence. Each page was a confession. Half riddles, scrawled codes, memories from the cell, mentions of people who no longer existed. And then, taped to the last page, a matchbox. Inside, a single piece of film, 35 millimeters. Frame by frame, I held it to the light. The second car, the license plate, CD-719. Proof. But who had filed this? Who stored it? And why let me find it now? I checked the archive record. Last accessed? Never. Box logged under unprocessed, non-essential. That's how they hide things, not by deleting them, by misfiling them. I put the notebook back, left the matchbox, took nothing. As I closed the box, I saw one more note. Folded, unmarked, inside. Some ghosts are meant to haunt, not to warn. I signed out of the archive with a fake name. Same as always. But walking out into the late Maryland sun, I realized something terrifying. That file wasn't hidden from the public. It was hidden from me, and someone still wanted me to find it. I never spoke to anyone about that notebook. Not Davis, not Langley, not even the woman who stayed after I vanished from the files. Some truths aren't explosive. They just linger like mold behind the walls. I walk past bridges sometimes. Not Glenick. That one's off limits. But any bridge. And every time I hear shoes on wet concrete, I wonder if he's still out there. Not Stepan, the other one. The one who knew how to walk like me, smile like me, disappear like me. Maybe he won. Maybe none of us were ever real to begin with. The pages are gone now. I checked. The box doesn't exist anymore. But I remember the words. I also pretended not to recognize you, so I wouldn't have to kill you. And every night since then, I wonder if I should have done the same before I vanish for good. Hit subscribe and tell me, did you already know about this? Or did it just find you too?